Hello and welcome to Club Today. We are excited that you all are here with us for some virtual programming. Today on the schedule we have Little Did You Know, followed up by Cooking Club, and then some art with Holly. So stick around and get ready to have some fun. Hey everybody, welcome to Club Today. We are going to be making homemade candles today. So stick around and I am going to show you how. Alright, so for supplies, as you can see, we've got some old crayons here, and I also have some old little candles. These are some tea light candles that burned out, so I can't use the wick anymore because it's burned to the bottom, but I can still use this wax that's on the inside, so that's what we're going to be using. So yeah, grab some old candles that you can't use anymore, some crayons, whatever you've got, and we're going to make some new candles. As you can see, just gonna start peeling off all of the paper because you definitely don't want the paper in there. So you're gonna start peeling off all of the paper for the crayons that you're gonna be using. 1 hour later. No, I'm just kidding. That didn't take too long. So now I've got my crayons all nice and peeled, and then I just gotta pop out the tea light candles. Alright, now I've popped out the tea light candles, making sure to get rid of this little guy. And you can also take like bigger candles if you have and like carve off parts of the wax. So really you can use whatever old candles you have laying around and whatever crayons. So let's move to the next step. Right, moving into the kitchen. A few more supplies here that we're gonna need. So let's start over here. You are gonna need some string of some kind. We're gonna learn how to make a wick for our candle, so some scissors to cut the string. And then we've got our wax from earlier, our candles and our wax. And then this is gonna be a really fun part. So we are going to use eggshells as the mold, and it is going to be super fun. So once we get the wax all melted, we're gonna pour it into here to create kind of a round candle. So that's gonna be our mold. And then over here, we're gonna need 2 separate pots or pans of some kind. So this one is going to hold the candle wax, and this one is going to have the water. And this is a technique called double broiler. So a lot of people use this when you're melting chocolate or, lots of different things like cooking. And also will be great for wax because you don't want the wax to get too hot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour a little bit of water in here, we're gonna heat that up, and then we're gonna put our wax chunks in here so that the water in the pot will heat up this pan and melt the wax. So that is what we are going to do, so let's get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and put just a couple inches of water. We're not gonna need too much of it. Okay, we've got our couple inches of water. Now let's get this nice and heated up. While the water is getting hot, I'm going to come over here and pick out some colors that I want to put into my candle. So I think for the first one, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out, so I'm going to break these up into little chunks, and I'm going to do some colors that might work well together, in case they melt, and then we will see how it looks. So I think I might do like a sun kind of vibe going, and then maybe something like this. Before I add the colors, I'm just going to go ahead and add all of these white chunks into the pot here. Alright, so my water's starting to kind of simmer a little bit, and I'm just going to put my pot right in there, and it is going to float a little bit, and that's okay, and we're just going to watch it and get stirring that as quick as we can. While that's melting, I'm going to measure out some wicks and get those ready for my eggshells. So you want them to be longer, you can always trim them down, but just getting those strings ready to be created into wicks. Alright, as you can see, starting to melt all the way down. We've still got couple chunks in there, so we're gonna wait till those get all the way melted. If you stir it, that'll help too. Alright, looks like that is just about there. Okay, so since that is melted, I'm going to make my wick. I'm going to make that by dropping this string into the wax. And I'm going to take it out and just let that dry. Alright, while my wax is drying, I've broken off some chunks and I'm going to add those right into the wax here. Just kind of mix them around, see what kind of color we get. Ah, nice reddish color. Turn down the heat. If it gets boiling, you want to turn down the heat because you do not want it to get too hot. Alright, so now I've gotten a muffin tin just to kind of help support it before I pour the wax in there. I've put my wick in and we are ready to pour the wax in. So I've got this really cool orange color, and let's go ahead and pour that in here. Woo, it's getting wobbly. I'm just gonna go ahead and tip it up here. Alright. While the wax is still warm, I'm just gonna go ahead and add a few more of these little chunks of wax just to kind of see, you know, what they end up looking like. So I'm gonna add a few more. Alright, then once I'm ready to let it start to settle, I'm going to position the wick so it's just right here in the center, and then I'm going to let it cool and we will see how it turns out. Quick little side note, if you want to get some nice little chunks to put on top, what I did was I kind of propped it up like this, and then I took the scissors and just grated it so I could get some nice chunks like this that I can put right on top. Kind of gives it that extra color. So just another little side note. So coming back to it a couple hours later, once it's, you know, cooled down and started to solidify, we're going to start peeling off the shell. So let's get going. All of the eggshell peeled off. And it's got this cool little design, and it turned out a little lighter, which is kind of cool. And then it looks like all the other little pieces sank to the bottom. So now we're gonna get ready to trim the wick. Alright, I've got the wick nice and trimmed, and it is ready to go. So it's a little wobbly. So if we wanted, we could kind of shave down this bottom part so it'll sit flat. So I think I might do that. Alright, so it's sitting really nice and flat now. So what I did was I took some scissors, so you can take a scissors, knife, just kind of shaved it down so now it's got that flat edge right here. And now it won't really roll around. So now, let's light this and see how it works. And there you go. Make a homemade candle. Hope you guys have fun and be safe when you're making your candle. Here are just a few more examples of candles that I've made. So I did the same kind of thing with these ones over here, just with different colors. So I did a nice green color, and then what I did was I added more crayon into it to give it like a darker color or a different color. So I started with this green originally, and then I added more and I got this pretty teal color, and then I added a darker one and I got this darker blue color. And I kind of just went with this artistic theme of like dripping it in different spots. And this one I thought was really cool because when I poured it, it leaked out, as you can see, and it pooled into the bottom of the muffin tin. And then it had the eggshell, and I thought that just looked really artistic and cool. So I left it in the shell. And then these ones I peeled off and got the smaller one and the bigger one. And then I also, what I did over here was I grabbed some cookie cutters that we had and I poured different layers. So I poured this nice cool green color, and then like I said, I added that extra crayon. And then I waited till this one kind of solidified a little bit, and then I added another layer, and then I poured in more and more just to kind of give it this cool layered look. So yeah, you can do any shapes that you want. Get cookie cutters, get whatever you want to make a mold out of it. And yeah, the possibilities are endless. So this is just some more examples of some cool homemade candles you can make. So yeah, just remember to be safe as you're heating it all up, and have fun and share any pictures of candles that you guys make. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed that little Did You Know segment, and now it's time to head to the kitchen for some cooking club.
Hey teens, it's Bonnie and I'm here for cooking again this week. And today we are going to do another dessert. We've done a couple like main dishes that you can do with the lasagna and the tortillas and biscuits, and we're going to do another dessert, which is one of my favorites. It's called butterscotch brownies. So it's pretty simple, and we will upload the recipe onto the website so you can have that, so you can make them for your family and win them over and make you the favorite, right? All right, so to start, we'll need a cube of butter. I'm using half because I already made half of it yesterday, and my husband and I don't need a whole bunch of these. So you need a cube of butter, 2 cups of brown sugar, sorry I showed you the back, 3 eggs, I got my eggs in this container, vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 3/4 cups flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. So they're all pretty basic ingredients that you should have at your home. And so we'll get started. So first you start with your cube of butter. So you want a full cube. I'm just using half because, like I said, I already made some and I don't need to eat them. I've been trying to get in shape for a half marathon. So alright, so you get a cube of butter. I've had mine sitting out since last night, so it's kind of melted a little bit, but that's okay. You kind of want it a little soft. And then you want to put in your 2 cups of brown sugar. So I'm going to put in my cup. Since I'm doing half, you can do half and just put it in a little pan, or you can do the whole thing and put it in a 9x13, like the pan I used for the lasagna. So get some sugar in here. Tried to cut my hole kind of big so it'd come out. And I was taught growing up to pat my sugar down, my brown sugar down. That's how my mom taught me, so that's what I do. All right. And I tried to bring a glass bowl so you can see what it will look like without us having to tip it out. So oh, again, sugar all over the counter again. All right, maybe a little bit more. Woo! I'm throwing sugar everywhere. All right, so I'm gonna dump my cup in there. Move these out of the way for a minute. So I'm gonna break it up a little bit. So we're gonna mix this together. And since I can't reach the mixer with my mic on, Denise is gonna do it for me. You'll just like blend them together for a little bit. Denise is mixing them together for us. And we'll show it to you once she's finished. Clean up my mess here. So these are one of my brother's favorites because he is not a big fan of chocolate. And so the chocolate brownies he doesn't really like. So he likes it when my mom makes these for him. So if you don't like chocolate, this is a bonus because there's no chocolate in them. And my husband likes them too, so. That's good. Oh. So she's just using a mixer with the beaters on them, so. If you really want to, you could probably use a wire whisk, but that'd take a lot more work that I don't want to do. All right. So she's mixed them all together. There's still some butter chunks, which is okay because as we add more ingredients, they'll break up. So this is what it looks like, and just makes the brown sugar a little darker. And so yeah. Okay, so now I'll just do that. Do you want to dump that into the garbage? Okay, so now we are going to add our eggs and our vanilla. So you want 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So I'm just going to do 1 because I'm halving it again. So there's vanilla and our eggs. So it says 3 eggs that you'll need. I'm putting 2 in because I can't really half an egg, so I figured going a little more is okay. So there's 1. And so there's 2. Okay, so once we get those in, we are going to mix it again. So if Denise will, sorry, I got eggs all over my hands. So Denise is mixing those all together again. And then we will add the rest of the ingredients when she is done. So, yep. Thank you. Okay, so she just mixed it all together, and it's kind of runny right now because all the dry ingredients we're going to add. You can kind of see it out the side. So we are going to add, it's 3 3/4 cup of flour. Since I'm doing half, I'm still going to do about a full cup because 7/8 is half of 1 3/4. So I'm just going to do about a full cup. Put that in there. And then 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I'm going to put in 1. And then half a teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to put a little extra in for my half because my husband said I needed to. when he tried my other ones. All right, so that's all the ingredients. So Denise is gonna mix it all together again. Thank you. And once you have it all mixed together, then we are going to put it into our pan, and we'll bake it at 350 degrees in the oven for 30 minutes. So the mixing itself doesn't take very long, the baking does. And when you bake it, last night mine came out a little runny. And so when I moved the pan, I could see it jiggling. So I put it in for an extra like 5 minutes and it helped with that. You just want to make sure your edges stay kind of brown. And also make sure you clean up after yourselves. I don't know if you have been, but that is also part of the cooking process, is the cleanup. It's not the funnest. Maybe with the brownies you can bribe siblings to help you or something. So we'll see what it looks like when Denise is done. Do you need this?
Yeah.
So you can use your rubber spatula to clean out the beater so you don't miss a whole lot. Or you can be careful and try to get it out as it's going. But
Okay, let's try to do that. Hold on.
so when you do that, you have to be careful so you don't fling it everywhere. If you just slowly come up when it's on the lowest speed, it'll come out most of the way anyway. Most of the way. Denise is doing great.
Okay. Is that okay?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so Denise has mixed it all together. It's a little thick, and that's how we want it. So we are now gonna just put it into our pan. So since I halved mine, I'm doing my little pan. It's a 8 by 8. If you did the full thing, you'll want a 9 by 13, which is the size of pan I used for the lasagna. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna scrape it out with my rubber spatula and put it into the pan. Sometimes it's easier if you have a bowl with a handle, you can kind of hold it with. If you don't, it's okay. The rubber spatula gets it out pretty good. And then you just take your spatula and you even it out throughout the pan the best you can. It's not going to be perfect. Looks really good. All right. I'm going to use my finger to get it off because there's still a lot on the spatula. All right. So there you go. There's a pan of unbaked brownies. Then you'll put it in the oven at 350 for 30 degrees, like I said earlier. And once you do that and make sure that they are good, another way you can test to make sure it's cooked all the way is you can put a toothpick in the middle, and if it comes out clean, then it's good. If it comes out with some stuff on it, then you probably should put it in for a little bit longer. And here's what they will look like. So the edges are kind of darker brown, but they are scrumptious and really good. So you just want them to turn a light brown, just like our biscuits, and then you can eat them and have a wonderful dessert with your family. So there you go.
That cooking club looks delicious. I hope you guys have all the ingredients and you're going to make that and you're going to bring some to me. And I'm also going to make it myself because it looks that great. Now it is time for Art with Holly.
All right, today I am going to teach you how to draw and shade a rose. And you can just do basic shapes, basic shading. If you want to make it a bit more sophisticated, you can, but don't worry too much yet. All you're going to need is some paper. Any paper will do, a pencil, preferably with a good eraser, and then any colored pencils, or you could also use markers, paint, whatever you want. And if you don't have colored pencils, you can also just shade with your pencil. So this one is for the youth. And you guys have done this lesson with me before. Some of you have anyway, where we do a little heart in the middle and then we start building the rows out from there. If you've done this with me before, this will be a wonderful review. If you've never done it with me, then this will be something brand new for you. So you all know how to draw a heart. You're gonna make it really small. See how small that is on the paper? Don't worry about making it exact though. It's okay if it's bigger or smaller. And it's approximately in the center. It's not totally centered. In fact, I might move mine over just a bit, but that's not important. Here we go. And also, it doesn't have to be the same on both sides. So all of you have, I'm sure, done the fish scale pattern, right? Where when you're drawing a fish, you basically have a W or a U shape, right? And you just keep making that shape. And when you get to the next row, what do? You start in the middle of it, right? And you make that same pattern, but you're hitting the middle of the U instead of the inside of it. And then when you get to the next row, you just repeat it, right? So I'm pretty sure you've all done this before. If you haven't, then you see the idea and you don't have to even worry about doing this. This is just an example. We're gonna take this same idea, except instead of doing it in rows like this, we're gonna do it in circles. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your little heart, and I'm gonna actually draw this bigger first so you can see what I'm doing, and then I'll do the same thing here. So I'm gonna draw my heart bigger. And if you wanna start it bigger too, that's fine. If it's too hard to do small, that's okay. So we have the same idea with these U's, right? If you think about the letter U, except we don't have to really worry about that little tail right there. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take that, we're gonna start, it doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna start right here at the top and just make about a half circle. It doesn't have to be, or that same U shape, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be kind of, it can move around in interesting ways. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep repeating that idea. See how we have a nice little row there? And then once we finish that, we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna hop on to the next row of petals. Do you see that? Except again, it's more of like, it's a row, but it's in a circle. So I'm gonna do the same idea, but I'm gonna do it really small, and then I'm gonna make it bigger. So the first ones that I do, they're gonna be small shapes, right? They're not that much bigger than that first heart that I did. But then, and don't worry if they overlap or anything, that's fine. So they can all stay pretty small, but once you start spreading out, they can start to get bigger. And don't worry if you accidentally miss some of the shapes, that's fine. Basically, you're just going around and hitting all of those petals. And you're just going a little bit bigger as you go out. Now the key with this is you just start in the center. Instead of trying to start big out here and then work your way in. It's much easier to start that way. Now as I'm getting this much bigger, I might even make a lot more of a large petal shape out here. And you don't have to keep it totally, you can, it might actually be better if I do still stick with that same pattern and not really skip too much. Because I think that makes it consistent. I don't know if you've heard of that word before. It just means that the pattern stays the same. I think I'll do one right over here and right here. I might make it a little bit bigger down here. See how that's starting to look like a rose pattern? But it doesn't have to look exactly like this. And it's okay if some of them are smaller, but you're gonna end up with some kind of shape like that. If yours looks different, that's fine because roses all look quite different, right? Now, once you're feeling pretty good about this, and you might even add, again, a couple more, what you're gonna do is you're gonna add, first you're just gonna add a little line. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight either. In fact, it might look better if there's a bit of a curve to it. You might be kind of light because up here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw these 3 long leaves. You might just see maybe the edge of another one. These are called the sepals, spelled like this. Maybe we'll make this one in the middle a little bit longer. Once you have that, you can just come along to the side, either side is fine, and just add another line and just maybe go slowly, because what you want to avoid is doing this kind of a thing where suddenly it's like really big down at the bottom. That happens to me a lot too. And if it helps, what you can even do is you can make small little lines that are about the same distance apart. Maybe they do get a little bit bigger as it goes down. Petals or stems often tend to get a little bit bigger near the bottom, kind of like a tree trunk sometimes. And then you can connect them that way if that's easier. So once you have that, and don't worry about the lines being perfectly erased or anything, that's good enough. Then we're gonna add some leaves, because rose leaves, if you've noticed certain flowers, the leaves, just like the petals are different on different flowers, the leaves are different too. So if you just start adding leaves like this, I mean, that's not bad, but we can do better and make it even look more like a rose. So I'll show you how to do that. So rose leaves, they grow in 3s, and you can even make a little line that's gonna show where the petal or where the leaf starts to grow out from the stem. So you might want to stagger the shape a little bit. That means you've got one higher than the other one. And then maybe just draw a skinny little line from there. And then you can have a leaf shape like that. See how it's like a football kind of a shape. Maybe you do 3 of them. And the biggest one maybe is in the center. I say maybe because if yours ends up differently, that's fine. But it's kind of nice knowing they don't all have to be the same size. Once you're satisfied with where that is, you're going to draw the veins on the leaf. And the way the rose leaves are is first, the main one you want to focus on is the one down the middle, like that. And you can have it totally straight, like that, or you can even do a bit of a curve on it. And then once you have that, if you're fine with that, you can stop right there. If you feel comfortable adding more detail, I would start with the bigger one, or the biggest one, and start adding the veins that go along each side of the leaf. And they're the same on both sides. So it's like a V shape, right? With maybe a bit of a curve to it. See how it's like a V? And it's actually a little bit easier if I do each one at a time. Like I do one side and then I do the other side rather than doing all on one side and on the other. I just personally think that's easier. But again, this is your artwork. You can do it differently. And if you feel like, if your rose, say maybe your rose is really small and you don't have space for this, you can leave it out. Or another idea, because see how this is like kind of getting a little small there. You can even add just some lines that are floating. They don't actually have to touch this middle line here, because what happens that's really cool is that your imagination actually fills that in. Do you see how your imagination just kind of connects those? So again, maybe with my bigger ones, maybe I do the whole thing, but maybe with the smaller ones, maybe I do a few that go all the way, and then I do some that again are just kind of floating. You don't even have to do them on both sides. It's really cool. That's one cool little secret with art, is that you don't have to fill in every single detail. Your imagination will do it for you. Okay, so what else am I missing? Can you figure it out with a rose? Every rose has its thorns, right? So we can just put basically little triangle shapes. One mistake I see students do is something like that. Whoa, we don't need to have thorns that are that crazy, right? We don't want those kinds of roses. That would look very painful. You can just make them real small, and you don't have to do a ton of them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could do less than that. See, if I take if I take this one away, it doesn't really hurt anything, right? I would avoid putting a ton over here in this area because you have your, remember these leaves, the sepals? And if you put a ton of thorns there, it kind of crowds everything and might get a little too busy. What that means, if you haven't heard that before, when people say things look too busy, it just means there's too much going on there, right? Okay, so if you're happy with it just like that, you could leave it. You could add another rose up to maybe 2 of them. Maybe you do a little bouquet, right? Or a little rose bush. It's up to you. But if you're happy with this, you can leave it like this. You can sign it maybe on the back, maybe even along the stem. You could do something creative, maybe even around the rose. That'd be cool. Maybe try something different. If you would like to shade it, and I just picked up red because that's often what we think of, right? Red rose, but you could literally do any color you want. But I'm going to show you if you would like to do the shading. This is optional. Then I'm going to show you a cool way to do it. So these lines are very helpful. And what I see some students do is they start shading the whole thing, and that looks like a pretty color, but what happens is we lose all the detail if we just shade the whole thing like this, because then the red lines start covering up the pencil lines and it doesn't look as cool. When I was your age, I used to not have the easiest time with shading. I used to kind of be scared of shading because I feel like I would do this beautiful drawing and then I would shade it and it wouldn't be as awesome anymore. I don't know if you've experienced that, but the way to avoid that happening is to just go with a lot of our drawing. Instead of trying to shade all that, I would the first step is go around and I would make this part dark. I would just darken those pencil lines with your colored pencil. And again, any colored pencil will work. However, if you're doing like a yellow rose, what I would do in that case is I would make, instead of doing this yellow, I would do it probably orange, right? And then do the yellow because it's hard to show a real light and dark yellow, right? You can do it, but that's just a lot harder. So I would recommend doing something like an orange on the outside. If you're doing, say, a blue rose, maybe you do a light blue and then a darker blue. And that's also why I chose the red, because the red is a little bit easier to do shading with because you can make it dark and you can make it light, right? And it's pretty easy to tell the difference. So you want to just go around, and it doesn't matter if you start in the middle. This time I started towards the end just to show you that you don't always have to shade it the same exact way you drew it. It's fine. You're going to get the same end result. So we're almost there. If you accidentally skip one or you miss one, it's not a big deal. See how I missed those few in the middle? Still looks good. So don't be worried about, oh no, what if I miss it? So we'll start there. We can come back and do this shading. In fact, maybe just so that we don't get back into this pattern, maybe we'll go ahead and we'll shade this one first too. We'll do the darker parts. And then we'll do the real fun blending parts. Just if we do this all at once, it'll be less of a problem, again, doing that kind of thing all over. So I'm going to just go along all those lines. Now when you're getting to the leaves, again, if it's too much, if you're just feeling overwhelmed, then maybe you don't worry about shading everything, or maybe you just shade like a hint of it. If you're not feeling up to it, if it's just feeling like too much work, see how you don't have to shade every single line and it still looks really good? But you definitely want to shade in the middle. That's the most important. And see how you can even just do like little hints from there and it still works. But if you're going to do anything, do the middle line. That's the most important part of that detail there. You also don't have to shade the thorn part. See, I could just leave that out. So again, you get to make choices. Don't be overwhelmed by this because there's definitely ways, just kind of like how we did this thing. There's a lot of ways that we can do this and still make it look good. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, just listen to that. You know, overwhelmed means it's just too much. Just listen to that feeling and be okay with that. It's okay to do a little bit less. Just don't give up on it. See again how that middle line, oops, and if I go a little outside, no big deal. I'll just shade that in darker. No problem. And just to show you again that that's okay, I might just do like just a little touch there. See, it looks good. So now I'm gonna go back up to this rose. And what I'm gonna do, where I already had it dark, I'm gonna start shading. But once I start to get into about the middle, I'm gonna get a lot lighter. See how like I'm just getting lighter with the pencil, and then I'm just going to stop. So I'm not even gonna shade the entire petal. If you wanna shade the whole petal, you can. This is just a technique I'm gonna show you. So again, I'm gonna start shading more dark, and then I'm going to start shading lighter, and I'm just gonna stop. Now some of you might be trying this and you might be thinking it's not working. Again, if you go out of the lines, no big deal. Well, it's all about the pressure, right? This is how you do it. So you press you press harder over where you want it dark, and then you want it to be lighter, you just start putting less and less pressure. See how it's like you can almost hear it, and then you just stop. So I'm gonna do the same thing here, but I'm just gonna be quiet and just let you listen to the pressure of the pencil. See that? Doesn't it have such a cool look to it? Now you might want to, as you're doing this, you might want to just go somewhere really quiet and just spend some time listening as you're doing the shading. And you can feel it too. And if your hand starts to get tired, just put your pencil down, maybe roll out your wrists a little bit, move your fingers, or even take a break from it. It's okay to take breaks from your art. You do not have to do the whole thing in one sitting. Some of my pieces, some of the paintings I've done and drawings have taken over 100 hours. So you can imagine I'm not sitting for that whole time, right? That would be crazy. We don't want to torture ourselves. We want it to be fun. So if you need a break, even if it's like you've been working for 5 minutes and maybe you just need to get up and stretch your legs and then you come back, well, that's fine. There's no rule saying you have to do it all at once. Now, if you do it and it's a little bit light, like right there, just do another layer over it. Now that's another technique. That's another way to do it, is maybe if your hand's getting really tired and you're maybe just pressing super hard, then maybe you just go light from the very beginning and then you just do several layers. So that just means you do it and then you go over again, maybe 3, 4, 5 times, who knows? You decide, but that is another way of doing it. You just want to go with what style works for you. Now some of you might decide, this is too much, and maybe you just do a little bit of a darker side and you don't do any blending, you don't make it any lighter. That's totally fine. Or maybe you just do it a little bit lighter and maybe just keep that part white. Maybe you don't even keep it white at all and you just shade in the whole thing. But even if you just shade in one petal at a time, it's still going to look much better than if you shade it all like this. Can you think about why that is? Do you know why it would look better to do one petal at a time rather than just shade the whole thing? What do you think? I think it's because if you shade the whole thing at once, then your eye can't really distinguish all these individual petals as well anymore. And so it doesn't look as detailed. If you do it one at a time, it really helps you to see the petals as single petals that come together to make this big rose, right? Now here's another idea. If it's overwhelming to shade this, then maybe you just do a smaller rose. Maybe, I mean, I didn't have to do all of these petals, right? I could have just done some like that and called it good. So that's another thought for you. I don't ever want you to feel like you have to do exactly what I'm doing. You can do your own thing. And as long as you're improving and progressing, that's really all that matters. and as long as you're having fun with it, you want it to be a fun thing. You don't want it to be overwhelming. Now with the green, you could do the same thing with that. You could take your green pencil. Notice I don't have any light green, and that's all right because we can just do the same thing. So I'm gonna leave it white in some spots. Maybe I'll make it really dark right here. Actually, maybe I will make it really dark right here, but then I will leave a little white spot. You see that? Do you know why I would make it darker over here? I think it's because we've got a shadow from the rose petals. That's why. Now I might even do some shading on the stem. Like maybe I kind of leave this part white and then I come over here. I don't want it to be super, super dark right there because see how I kind of want it to look like it's fading? So I'm going to make it darker about right here. Yeah, and then again, just fade it up. Maybe I leave it white right there. And with this, again, just an easier way to do this. Just do one side, do the other side. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then maybe come up to the top and do the same thing. Now, if you want it to be super detailed and you feel you have the time, you can even do that same kind of technique and do it vein by vein on the leaf. See, that can have a real cool look to it. But you have to decide if you have the time and the patience for that. And remember the thing about patience, it gets better, it grows the more you use it. Even though I consider myself a pretty patient person, I can still improve, and I try to do that all the time. If I'm feeling frustrated with something, I think to myself, oh good, this is an opportunity for me to gain patience. And I remind myself that, and then I usually feel so much better. But sometimes we just don't have the time, and it's okay to just do it kind of quickly too, because our main focus is this. So it's okay to make this a little less detailed. And just to show you what I was talking about with the signature up here, I think I'm going to erase this part for now, just because you all understand now that these are the sepals right there. I'm going to take this and I am going to sign my name. I'm going to start right here. And my name is going to curve around. I can curve my paper with this. So it's a little bit easier. Ooh, that was kind of fun. Maybe I even do something like that over here. Maybe I even go from one side. Ooh, that's cool looking. That's just an idea for you, because if I told you to do, if I suggested that, I might as well show you what it looks like. All right, now you guys can again add whatever you want. I mean, you could add a whole background. There could be a hand here about to pick the flower. There could be grass here with maybe your house behind it, right? Maybe you put a little dog, who knows? I mean, you can get as detailed as you want. You could put a little vase here, or you can just leave it like this. It's your choice. But that is our little rose drawing. I hope you guys had fun with that. Remember to focus on your progress, and I will see you next week. Bye!
Alright, well that is it for today. We're so grateful that you guys all joined us and you participated. Remember, any submissions need to be sent to royteen@bgcweberdavis.org, and we will see you tomorrow.